Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 696. 696. February the 17th, 2019, Sunday. Alrighty, let's get right to it. Well, it looks like the dingy Dems, the dingy Dems are acting exactly the way you would expect them to act. Okay, so in regards to Trump signing the national emergency, of course, there have already been 6 lawsuits filed. It happened within the first hour of him declaring the national emergency. That's fine. He's going to win in the Supreme Court. But moving on from there, we have this demo commie named Earl Blumenauer. Earl Blumenauer, he's from Oregon. Does that surprise you? And Mr. Blumenauer has announced his intention to introduce a resolution that would make climate change a national emergency. The only problem with that is that only the president has executive authority to declare a national emergency. Now, you can introduce a resolution. It would just become another bill. And I hope you do that, Mr. Blumenauer. Quite honestly, I love comedy, and I can really rarely get too much of it. So I hope you do introduce a resolution to suggest that climate change is a national emergency. That would be very funny. We would all have a lot of fun with that. A lot of new memes. Trump would have a field day with that. Believe me. In fact, I expect a Trump tweet on this anytime. These people are just... they're a freak show circus. A freak show circus. They're providing plenty of entertainment for all of us. Trump derangement syndrome. Alrighty, coming to a therapist near you pretty soon, I can assure you of that. In fact, I told you in a couple of videos ago that it's just a matter of time before some therapist, some left-wing whack job therapist, comes out and tries to make the argument that it is an actual, Trump derangement syndrome or something like that is an actual disease. Believe me, give it time. It's going to happen. Now, let's see here. Oh, we have Mueller saying that Manafort is looking at 24.5 years in prison. Oh boy, that's a long time. Probably the rest of his life. That's a pretty high price for having an ostrich fur coat. But, let's see. I wonder if he's looked into the Rotten Reverend Clinton's crimes. How many years that would add up to. I'm thinking he hasn't. Maybe we'll be looking at some of his crimes. Maybe Uncle Bob will be looking at 24.5 years in prison. But I would say that most likely what Manafort is looking at is a pardon. A full pardon. That's my guess. Right after Trump is reelected in 2020, I expect one of the very first things he's going to do is a complete pardon of Paul Manafort. Because the entire Mueller witch hunt is going to be found to have been a fraud. Therefore, fruit of the poison tree. That means that everything that happened as a result of that fraudulent investigation should be overturned. Happens every day. There's a case right now pending, I forget what state it is, but they had a crooked cop, and he set up, I forget how many people, hundreds, and they're in the process right now of going back to every case that this guy handled, and they're having to let every one of those guys out of jail. Some of them are actually legitimately criminals, but some of them were actually framed and set up by this crooked cop. So it happens all the time. Well, the latest on the Jussie Smollett situation is that Jussie has lawyered up. And not just any lawyer. He's gone for a high-profile lawyer. In fact, one of the same lawyers that's representing Michael Cohen. Now, that doesn't sound too good to me because Michael Cohen's about to go to jail. But anyway, I guess he couldn't help that. Let's see. So, cops have contacted Smollett's lawyer to arrange a meeting with Smollett as soon as possible. As soon as possible. Cops have told a Fox 32 reporter that it was the Nigerian brothers who bought the rope at an Ace Hardware store. The rope was found around Smollett's neck. When the police, of course, came to get his statement, he had still had the rope around his neck, which apparently his friends, the Nigerian brothers, purchased at Ace Hardware. It is being reported that the Nigerian brothers have agreed to cooperate after being threatened with a battery charge or battery charges. Detectives are now analyzing a bottle of bleach seized from Smollett's apartment. Now, keep in mind, his original claim was that he got beat up by two white guys wearing MAGA hats, although now he's saying he didn't say they were wearing MAGA hats, as he was eating a sandwich that he just got at Subway. So apparently the entire thing was, again, like so many of these, there's have to have been, what, a dozen or so of these cases now of crazy leftists making up lies about Trump supporters, and they are exposed as being frauds. Just like everything with the left, it's all a big fraud. Everything is fraud with the left. That's what they do. Oh, here's some news for you. It appears that Madame Botox has wished everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Of course, the problem with that is that it was Valentine's Day. My goodness. She gets those dates confused. Thanksgiving from Valentine's Day. I could see how you could get those two confused, I think. She's senile. More evidence of that fact. Let's see. Well, now that Andy McCabe has admitted to discussing a coup d'etat against the president, a lot of people are very nervous. McCabe basically said that there were multiple meetings with DOJ and FBI officials and lawyers. Oh my. Now, if you're one of those DOJ officials or lawyers from the DOJ or the FBI that had those meetings with Andy McCabe about a coup d'etat against the sitting president without evidence or cause, you're probably lawyering up right now, because McCabe didn't just say that as an offhanded statement. There was an intent behind what he said and how he said it. Just like there was intent for him to say, well, it was Rodenstein who came to me and suggested that he wear a wire. Clearly, McCabe is making his plans for how he's going to respond to the indictments that are surely coming his way. We'll get more into that in a few. It appears that MSNBC is now turning on OcasioCortez, and it won't be very long now before they completely destroy her. They're not going to wait till 2020. They don't have that much time. They know that she's a real problem. Now, they created Ocasio-Cortez eyes, so it will be them who will destroy her. And I'm sure they've gotten their marching orders from the powers that be in the Democratic establishment to take her out. So it looks like we now have the Morning Schmo, along with Aaron Burnett, are the latest fake news pundits to attack the wild-eyed commie, Ocasio-Cortez, after she helped blow up the deal that would have brought Amazon to New York. And of course, the fallout from that is not over. So what they did was they did a couple man-on-the-street interviews. They went down into that Queens district, right where that was going to be, right where that Amazon was going to be built, and they actually interviewed some man-on-the-street type people. And to a man, every single one that they interviewed, of which were like 3 or 4, they all said that this was a disaster, that it would have done so much good for that community, which has a lot of problems and a lot of shortfalls in their piggy bank. So clearly, the fact that they didn't go out and find 3 or 4 people to support Cortez, instead they go find 3 or 4 people who think it's horrible and it's the worst thing that ever happened to them, tells you which side of the ledger that they're on. And it's obvious that they don't do anything without their marching orders from the heads at the DNC and the leftist establishment. So it appears now that they have turned their guns on Ocasio-Cortez, and it shouldn't be long now. We have the Japanese Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, has nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, officially. Not only that, the South Korean President, Moon Jae-in, has also seconded his motion, formally, that is. We also have Indiana Congressman Luke Messer and 17 other members of Congress have formally nominated Trump as well. And this has to do, of course, with what's going on the Korean Peninsula. Of course, Trump has a meeting again with Kim Jong Un here sometime in March, I believe, which will take place in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, I understand. And we'll see what happens there, but it's very likely that before 2020, we're going to see some sort of a reunification on the peninsula. I don't know if they'll get to full denuclearization, the weapons programs, because every country kind of likes to have their defenses. Again, you can understand from North Korea's perspective, they can say, hey, yeah, you may be willing to work with us or whatever, but as soon as you leave office, what's to say that the next president and Congress that comes in won't decide to go back to the hardline tactics of regime change and all this sort of thing. So you can kind of understand where Kim Jong Un would get off. It's just, they're going to have to find the right way to allow North Korea to have some sort of a national defense that the South Koreans are comfortable with, that China's comfortable with, that Japan is comfortable with, and that most of the world community can live with. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think we're looking to completely de-weaponize North Korea. I think the issue is the nuclear part of it. And so how that all comes about, I don't know. But certainly great progress has been made on the Korean Peninsula. And I don't think it's going to have so much to do with the complete elimination of the nukes in that region. I think that's going to take some time, and that's a difficult issue, and it's going to involve more players than just the U.S. It's really going to involve primarily North Korea, South Korea, Japan, and of course China. Are all going to have to be able to come to some agreement on that. But what I'm looking at is a reunification of North and South Korea, free movement, flow of people between the two, and a normalized relations and the end of hostilities. If that occurs before 2020, and I think it's very likely it will, then Trump will almost certainly have to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And won't that drive the leftist absolutely nuts? It will drive him crazy. Absolutely crazy, especially at the EU. Oh my goodness. I love this president. Well, it appears that the skateboarder, little Bobby O'Rourke, isn't happy with just eliminating the border wall at El Paso. Bobby is now saying that he would destroy the entire border wall all across the American-Mexico border if he could. Oh, yeah, why don't you go ahead and campaign on that? In fact, I hope the entire Democratic Party, all the candidates, sign on to that and go out there and campaign on eliminating the entire border wall system. In fact, we should just get rid of the border wall, all the fencing. In fact, border guards. Why have the guards there? Just go ahead and get rid of all of them. We can just have a complete open border and just let people pass freely back and forth between Mexico and the U.S. Why don't you go ahead and advance that theory from the left, and let's see how that plays in the upcoming elections. Let's see how that works. But probably what will be a better idea is if someone would get the skateboarder, Bobby, maybe some Play-Doh or some Lincoln Logs or possibly that bucket of slime. Something to keep this guy, occupied or busy and entertained while Trump runs the country. That would be my recommendation. Okay, let's go now to a really pretty good story. It's not a long story, but it's a pretty decent story in the Federalist, which is one of my favorite places to read articles and things. There's really good writers over at the Federalist. In fact, I think H.A. Goodman just got an article published at the Federalist. But I'm talking today about an article by Willis Krumholz, and his article is entitled 7 Big Takeaways from Andrew McCabe's Planned Coup. 7 big takeaways from Andrew McCabe's planned coup. So I'm going to go through some of this for you, but I recommend suggest you go over to thefederalist.com and read the story for yourself. It's not a long story, and it makes some very good points, good analysis, you might say. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take a look at some of these. The number one point that he makes is that McCabe proves and he's talking about this interview that Andy McCabe has done with 60 Minutes, Scott Pelley. Now, all we've seen is just a short clip. There's much more. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if at this point, just from the blowback that has occurred, that they aren't trying to get 60 Minutes not to air that. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if I was McCabe's lawyer, I would absolutely be contacting 60 Minutes and hitting them with a restraining order and say, no, you can't broadcast that. But they may have some legal agreement in place which has already been signed, which can't be reversed, and that may be the case here, because I can't imagine just the damage that was done just from that short teaser clip that they're going to let that entire interview air. But maybe they'll go in and edit some things out. I don't know what they can do, but just the interview itself and the very short clip, just from what we saw, gives us these 7 points of these 7 takeaways from the Andrew McCabe planned coup. So obviously, the first thing here is that McCabe proves that Comey's firing was justified, and it's because it was first of all, it is within Trump's constitutional powers to fire the FBI director. There's no question about that. He can fire the FBI director for any reason he wants, or no reason at all. So you can't not justify an obstruction case because Trump did what he's legally authorized by his constitutional authority to do. Comey, of course, was guilty of subordination. Therefore, Trump was justified in firing him. He stood up there and he basically occupied the role of the Attorney General, which the FBI director is not supposed to do. The FBI is supposed to do the investigation and turn it over to the Department of Justice, and they make the decision. But Comey basically exonerated the rotten Reverend Clinton, which essentially was subordination. He didn't have the authority to do that, but he did it anyway. Therefore, he certainly should have been fired. Comey obstructed the Clinton email investigation and was part of the cover-up of that. Of course, he created the small group. He's the one that made sure it stayed within just a small group of people, and he made sure the people overseeing it made sure that the rotten Reverend Clinton was not charged for the very crimes that he laid out. He laid out her crimes. Laid them out. And then he exonerated her. Comey lied to Congress. We know of at least 4, 5, maybe 6 lies now. Comey lied to Congress, but the biggest lie, I think, of all was that Comey lied to Congress and to the president's face when he said that Trump was not under investigation when in fact he was. And we know he was. Why? Because McCabe just told us. He confirmed it. Up until now, we've known it, but no one in the FBI or DOJ has actually come out and said, yeah, we were investigating Trump. But McCabe lays it all out there in that little clip. He says, oh yeah, the day after I talked to Trump, I went and talked to the people on the Russia investigation, and I opened up the investigation on Trump for obstruction and collusion with the Russians. It's cat's out of the bag. They can't deny it now. It was an investigation into Trump. Comey told Congress there was no investigation into Trump. And even told Trump that to his face. Yes, that will get you fired. Lying to your boss will get you fired. And then, of course, Comey tried to extort the president with the phony dossier. And that was a plot cooked up between him and Clapper and Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, and they used CNN to set the whole thing up. Number 2, McCabe and his co-conspirators only ever had the dossier to go on. That's exactly right. We continued to try, Nunes and every member of the Freedom Caucus, everyone you can think of, trying to, including in the media, trying to actually get the evidence that was used to get the FISA warrant, to launch the investigations, to launch the Mueller probe, and all these other things. And still they have not been able to come up with anything. They tried the Papadopoulos Down the Hatch Downer meeting. That didn't fly. They've tried some other things. None of these things have worked. So the only thing, when you actually get right down to it, that they've ever been able to actually show is the dossier. No other evidence has been brought forward. The dossier was never verified, and it was salacious and unverified, according to Comey himself. He testified to Congress that the dossier was salacious and unverified, yet at the very time that he was saying that. He knew that 6-7 months earlier they had used that to get FISA warrants and launch multiple investigations, which he said didn't exist. Comey's going to jail, right along with his buddy Andy McCabe. The FBI and DOJ knew it was opposition research paid for by the rotten Reverend Clinton, the opposition campaign, and that Steele was biased. And they knew that because Bruce Orr told them so. Not to mention, they lied to the FISA court and produced a fraudulent document. They withheld material information and also information that would have exonerated both Trump, Carter Page, and Papadopoulos. And Flynn as well, if you want to go that far. Number 3. Much of this seems to be a cover-up. Yes, the sophisticated media leak strategy that we've been watching is now collapsing. It's exposing both the media and the corrupt FBI and DOJ officials. And of course, we finally found out what the insurance policy was, thanks to this little clip from Andy McCabe on 60 Minutes, because McCabe told us. He told us what the insurance policy was. The cover-up. The insurance policy was the cover-up. And that's why McCabe told 60 Minutes, he said, I wanted to make sure that I put together an investigation that could not be stopped or impeded if in fact I were fired or taken off the case or whatever. I wanted to make sure this would go on. And what was that? Uncle Bob, the special counsel. Uncle Bob was the insurance policy. Number 4, the conspirators might be turning on each other. That's absolutely correct. McCabe's 60 Minutes interview screams. It screams. If I go down, I'm taking everyone else down with me, including Rodenstein and others in the DOJ and the FBI are now in the skillet. They are in the skillet, in the frying pan with Andy. That's why McCabe made a special point to say in that little interview clip, he said, Rod Rodenstein came to me on more than one occasion to talk about wearing a wire. He also said that I had multiple meetings with FBI and DOJ officials about the Russia thing and about this investigation into Trump. The reason that he wanted to make sure he mentioned that there were other people involved in all of this, he was not so much speaking to Pelley or 60 Minutes or even to you or me. McCabe is talking to all those other people who he thinks are waiting in the shadows with a dagger to stick it in his back to cover their ass and make him the scapegoat. He's letting all those people know that if he goes down, and he is, they're all going down with him. And they are. McCabe might be telling the truth about Rodenstein. And how do we know that? Well, because of Rodenstein's non-denial denial. We saw a lot of that during the Watergate years. A lot of that during Watergate. A lot of non-denial denials. And of course we have Rodenstein's refusal to testify before Congress. But I think they're going to get him in there. Lindsey Graham seems pretty hell-bent on that. And hopefully we will hear from Rodenstein. He's got a lot of problems. Right along with Andy McCabe. And do you think Rodenstein is also going to take the fall alone? Oh, no. Rodenstein, he's got a boss too, and his name is Comey. And he has a boss, and her name is Loretta Lynch. And she has a boss, and his name is Barack Hussein Obama. And is he going to take the fall? Oh, no, I don't think so. He's going to need to find another scapegoat. Someone find the rotten Reverend Clinton, who no longer has any power. Nobody really likes her very much. And they'd sure like to stop her from jumping into the fray in 2020. Pretty good timing, don't you think? Number 6. The whole Russia story is tainted and corrupt. True. McCabe's interview with 60 Minutes proves the entire Russia probe was tainted from the start. The dossier, the fraud on the FISA court, and the insurance policy, which was Uncle Bob. All the efforts were about getting Trump, not finding out what Russia did, or doing anything about it. That's why there was no effort to look at the DNC servers. getting rid of Trump would have justified their crimes. Now, that is not going to happen. And they're in deep, deep shit. Comey, number 7. Comey, McCabe, Clapper, and Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, are unpatriotic dopes. True. All 4 have departed from previous FBI and intel leaders who normally retire quietly and live quiet lives. All have become paid contributors to fake news outlets. They have written books and have posted hysterical comments on social media. Their behavior has proven that their actions were driven by hate and rage and fear of prosecution for the crimes that they were involved in. They are more interested in protecting themselves than doing what is best for the country. No kidding. So there you go. That's just a few of the highlights from that article. You may want to go take a look at it for yourself in the Federalist. Okay, getting back to some other news here. Well, did you guys know that Alexandria Ocasio, Marty Feldmanized Cortez has just been given $10 million from Netflix for her life story? I wonder if Ocasio-Cortez realizes that Netflix also paid 0 taxes last year, just like Amazon. But she had no problem taking the 10 mil. Here's another thing. We're about to find out if Ocasio Marty Feldmanized Cortez is a true blue-red diaper baby. We're about to find out very soon, because if she truly is a real commie and she really believes what she's saying, then she will check that box on her tax form to contribute as much as she wants. And so in this case, because she wants 70%, we should see Ocasio-Cortez check the box on her tax form to contribute 70% of that $10 million to the government, to the IRS. If she's a true commie and she actually practices what she preaches, she wants us all to pay 70% tax rate, then we should see Ocasio-Cortez pay 70% of that $10 million, that would be $7 million of the $10 million, to the IRS. Do you think she's going to do that? Do you think she's going to cough up 7 of the $10 million? That still leaves her with $3 million, which is way too much. No one should have $3 million, according to Ocasio-Cortez. That's too much money. It's not fair. Nobody else in her neighborhood has $3 million. She should take the remaining $3 million and go pass it out to the people on her block. She should feel horrible for even having $3 million. I mean, she really didn't earn it, did she? What did she do to earn it? She became an overnight media sensation because of the media. What has she done to have earned $10 million? But make a proposal that's wholly impossible to implement. The Green New Deal, which I describe as more of the Communist Manifesto. She just cost her own community $30 billion in tax revenues over 10 years, 25,000 jobs that would pay about $150,000 a year, not to mention all the other economic activity that would take place and all the wonderful things that would happen as a result of all that. After those two epic fails, she somehow is worthy of $10 million? I don't think so. I think she needs to give up at least 70% of it to the IRS, and she should give the rest out to folks in her neighborhood, because they're going to need it now that they can't get those $150,000 a year job at Amazon. Well, of course, we always have to have the Pope chiming in. He's a hardcore lefty. Most popes are. I have no use for popes. I'm not Catholic, so I could give a flying you-know-what about the Pope. I believe that Ozzy Osbourne once tried to write a lyric when he was in Black Sabbath. He tried to write a lyric that said, "Would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope, and do you think he's a fool?" Now, they were, two members of that band are, practicing Orthodox Catholics. I do believe Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler are pretty hardcore Catholics. And I know Tony Iommi's mother was a fairly hardcore Catholic. I mean, you'll rarely see Tony or Geezer without their rosary wrapped around their neck. They always have a rosary on their bodies. And I don't think they liked that lyric very much and told Ozzy that he couldn't say, "Would you like to see the Pope?" on the end of a rope, and do you think he's a fool? And I think they also told him that he couldn't write "God is dead" either. Not that he didn't do it anyway. I think he went back and actually changed the lyric when they weren't around. He went back in the studio and recut the line when they weren't there and did it anyway. Probably another one of the reasons why they fired him, but that's okay. By the way, Ozzy was recently hospitalized, I understand, for something, pneumonia or something, but I think he's out of the hospital now and doing fine. I don't know that you could actually kill Ozzy at this point. With all the various chemicals running through his body, he's probably immune to everything. If a virus goes in Ozzy's body, it dies. And by the way, Pope Francis is urging Christians to overcome the fear of migrants. Well, that's easy to say if you live in a place called the Vatican. It's surrounded by a gigantic wall and thousands of armed guards. The Pope's one of the most protected people in the world. And when he goes out in public, he rides in a little Pope-mobile, a little bulletproof Pope-mobile. So yeah, I got a suggestion for you, Pope Francis. How about you come down here to the American-Mexican border, and we'll toss your ass across the border into Tijuana, and you can have a conversation with those drug kingpins and the coyotes and all the other various people waiting for you on the other side of the border. With all that money you got, I'm sure you'd make a nice ransom prize, and you would probably find yourself, well, I'm not going to go there, but let's just say that maybe Pope Francis ought to spend a little bit more time defrocking those priests who are raping kids. Maybe you should get busy on that. You're worried about our southern border. You need to be worried about what those folks underneath you are doing with young boys, Pope Francis, you a-hole. Go to hell. Now, sorry if I offended any Catholics out there. Tough. It's a tough break. But I hate to say it, but if you're a Catholic, and I have a lot of Catholic friends, my Catholic friends are nothing like the popes that I've seen in the past, 30, 40 years. These guys are totally off the reservation, man. And most Catholics are not like what you see coming from the Vatican. The Vatican is a political... It's all politics. I mean, they're just politicians too. They just wear robes and pretend to be religious leaders. But as we can see, popes are all hardcore lefties. They're all. I can't think of a single pope that wasn't a hardcore lefty in my entire lifetime. Mind your own damn business, Pope Francis. America doesn't give a flying shit what you think. Commie bastard. Alrighty. Maxine Waters has called for rallies across America to send Trump a message. No fake emergency. Well, apparently she hasn't read the recent polls, but most of the people agree that we do have a serious problem. You can call it an emergency. You can define it however you wish. The fact of the matter is, people for decades and decades and decades have known that we have a serious problem on the border. How you want to classify it, an emergency or a problem or an issue or whatever, people know for decades and decades and decades that we've had a really big problem on our border. It's affecting communities all across the country, not just border states. Everyone knows it. This is not rocket science. This is very simple. People have wanted our borders secured forever. It's just the fact that because of the fact that neither Democrats nor Republicans ever wanted to do it, and anytime they made promises, they never backed them up. People just threw up their hands and gave up. But for the first time in my lifetime, we actually have a president who promised to deal with the issue, and he's following through. That is called character. What is character? Character is the ability to carry out a resolution long after the enthusiasm from which it was made has left you. Character. And Trump has a bunch of it. So now we finally have someone who will do what he promised. And I can assure you that the majority of right-thinking, sane Americans know it's the right thing to do. Shut the hell up, Mad Max, and crawl back in your hole. I'm convinced that she's one of the California raisins. Don't forget your vote for Dumbass of the Week on this video. This video is where I'll be going to check Dumbass of the Week. Get your votes in. It's going to be a tough, tough competition. We'll be looking at the first, second, and third place finishers. Thanks so much for tuning in. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.